No risk it, no biscuit.
Coming from the Arizona desert, presented by SBNation.com. For Arizona Cardinals fans, by Arizona Cardinals fans, with outsider and insider's perspectives, this is Revenge of the Birds. Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans. This is Revenge of the Birds Radio. I'm your host, Jess, as always, as we are getting ready for the Arizona Cardinals Week 2 matchup against the New York Giants. To do so, I've brought on a guest from BigBlueView.com, our SB Nation sister site, the best New York Giants site I'm sure that you can find on the internet anywhere, and we have Ed Valentine on with us. How are you doing today, Ed?
Good, Jess. How are you?
Excellent. Glad to have you on. I really appreciate it. Cardinals fans, this show is brought to you by Audible.com, the internet's leading audio content provider, and we're offering, our listeners get a deal going on right now where you can sign up for free at Audible.com. Get a tested trial run and get yourself a free audiobook download. You can do that by visiting audibletrial.com/Revenge of the Birds. That's audibletrial.com/Revenge of the Birds. You get to try out the service for free and get yourself a free audiobook download. All right, Ed, so we get started. We've got both teams coming off of Monday night football games. The Giants on the wrong end of a game with which they lost to the Detroit Lions. And the Cardinals coming off a Week 1 victory, a comeback victory, down 11 late to come back for an 18-17 win over the San Diego Chargers. They go from being two of the last games of the week to one of the first games of Week 2. What is the state of Giants football right now?
Well, the state of Giants football right now is probably not real good. I think that the fan base is certainly nervous at this point. The Giants are coming off of a season where they went 7-9, where things just weren't good. The Giants started 0-6, wound up 7-9, wound up missing the playoffs for the second straight year. Fans were hoping, that the team would get off to a better start this year. And right now, there's just a lot of nervousness that things are going to go south again at this point. After losing a game on Monday that a lot of people thought was winnable and not looking very good in doing it.
Well, let's back up a little bit. Yes, they had the disappointing season a year ago. Obviously, it's a little bit different out there in Giants land because that is an area that is used to competitive, good football. After all, they do have a couple of championships in the last few years. Eli Manning, and the Giants seem to have the only medicine of how to defeat Tom Brady. It seems
we're not sharing either,
and that's perfectly understandable. Why would you want to share that knowledge? But back up. Let's go talk to the off season. What happened after last season? Were there any coaching changes? Who are the players that left? Who are the players that came? And who are some of the players that are returning, per se, in terms of injuries? And what is the injury status today? So we've got a whole bunch of things to bring Cardinals fans up to date on what happened with the Giants over the offseason.
Yeah, I'm happy to go through that with you, Jess. It's one of those things where when you live it every day, you sort of forget that not everyone on the outside understands exactly what has gone on with the Giants and with the team that you get invested in. So with the Giants, at the end of last season, John Mara, one of the co-owners, the most involved of the ownership group, basically said at the end of the season that he felt like the offense was broken. That was the biggest source of concern that the Giants had. So what happened was that Kevin Gilbride, the longtime offensive coordinator, retired. And basically he did the Giants a favor because I think the Giants were in a situation where they were convinced that they had to move on from Gilbride. They had to try something different. And I'm pretty sure that he would have been fired had he not retired. And what his retirement did was it led to a chain reaction of a massive overhaul within the Giants offense. They brought in Ben McAdoo from the Green Bay Packers, and McAdoo is a first-time offensive coordinator. They basically changed the entire offensive coaching staff. They're running a brand new offensive system, which is a West Coast-based system, vastly different than the more vertical play-action passing attack that the Giants have used for the last decade. The personnel is vastly different, actually, on both sides of the ball, but especially on offense. So this is a much different situation and a much different system and a much different offensive team than what you've seen from the Giants in the past.
So offensively, so you have the change. Was that a philosophical change because of the personnel they had in terms of offensive line, or is it just that Tom Coughlin wanted to do something different?
Well, I think that part of the theory and what Coughlin has said repeatedly is that he didn't want people to be comfortable. He wanted people to basically have to go back to the drawing board. He wanted people to have to learn. He wanted, Eli Manning and anyone else that was returning to the Giants. He wanted them to be challenged again. And he certainly has managed to do that. Manning has said that, he's worked harder and had to study more this offseason than he has in a long time. He admitted that, in the past few years, he knew everything that Kevin Gilbride was going to install before Gilbride installed it, that it wasn't difficult or challenging for him, as the Giants installed their offense each year. And that is certainly no longer the case. He's had to learn, entire new system, entire new terminology, new footwork, new pass routes. He's had to learn everything from scratch. And, I think Arizona went through this a year ago with Carson Palmer.
Yes, it's exactly what happened. And interestingly enough, I saw a report and wrote about it this morning about Bruce Arians' comments about Eli Manning. He said you can't really judge a quarterback in a new system, especially who's been one in one particular scheme for a long time, for about half a season. That's how long it took Carson Palmer to get comfortable, and unfortunately for the Giants, that it might take that long for Eli.
Well, I think that the thing that both Bruce Arians and during his press conference today, Ben McAdoo brought up was the fact that it becomes more than simply learning the playbook, more than learning the terminology, and what your responsibilities are. Each defensive team that you play has different personnel, runs a little different scheme, runs different coverages, different blitz packages. So each team will approach you differently. And you're in a brand new system where you haven't gone through these play calls and these checks and seen these blitzes with this particular system. So each team that you see is showing you something that you haven't dealt with before. And until you've been through, several different teams and several different types of defenses, I think it's still a learning curve. And that's where the Giants are right now.
Now, I'd like to ask you this. Based on Eli's season last year, where he was, to say the least, inconsistent with especially with the
he was terrible. You can say it. He was terrible.
The 27 interceptions a year ago, is it a good move to change completely the sort of offensive set where the idea, I remember hearing where it was like the goal was 70% completion. That's kind of it's kind of going Phillip Rivers style of offense from a year ago. Is that a wise thing to do with Eli and his skill set?
Well, let me address the 70% thing first. That's sort of a pie in the sky. Every offensive coordinator that runs the basic 3 or 5 step drop, West Coast, get the ball out in a hurry. Every offense that runs that system would love to see 70%. So that's a pie in the sky, in a perfect world sort of scenario. The reality of it is that I think Eli's career high in completion percentage in an admittedly different, more vertical, riskier offense. I think his career high is 62%, 62.5%, something like that. So I think the Giants would be thrilled if he was to hit 65% completions. In terms of the whole idea, I don't think it was a bad idea to change offensive coordinators. Whether this system is the right system, I think it, for Eli and for the Giants is a question that we can't answer yet. The difficulty, and I wrote about this morning on Big Blue View, the difficulty that the Giants have that I don't think the Cardinals faced is simply in personnel. The Cardinals had Larry Fitzgerald and Michael Floyd to throw the ball to. They had Rob Hausler at tight end, who's maybe not a great tight end, but he's a pass catching, he's an adequate pass catching tight end. They had weapons to throw the ball to. When you look at the Giants, the problem isn't necessarily Eli Manning's adjustment. The problem might not be scheme. The problem might simply be that there just aren't enough playmakers.
Okay. Looking at the personnel in terms of, who are the key players that left or maybe happily left or fans were glad to see leave? And was there any changes on people coming in?
Well, the big name who is no longer with the Giants is, of course, Hakeem Nicks, the wide receiver who left as a free agent and went to Indianapolis. Nicks was considered the Giants' number one wide receiver, although, to be brutally honest, he hadn't really played like it the last 2 years. And last year, in my opinion, he played like a disinterested player who was trying to protect himself so that he could hit free agency and be healthy. So Nicks is gone. They had signed Brandon Myers to play tight end last year, and that didn't work out. So Myers is gone. They've revamped the offensive line. Chris Snee retired. David Deal retired. David Voss was released partially due to not playing very well last year, but mostly due to the fact that he suffered a neck injury that probably ends his career. The Giants let Kevin Booth, one of their other offensive linemen, go via free agency. So the offensive line is completely revamped. They brought in Jeff Schwartz from Kansas City. They brought in J.D. Walton from Denver. They signed John Jerry, who was with Miami last year. So the offensive line is completely revamped. Schwartz actually is on short-term IR. The offensive line is brand new. They drafted Odell Beckham in the first round as a wide receiver, and unfortunately he's been hurt and hasn't played yet. They brought in Rashad Jennings as a running back, and they drafted Andre Williams in the fourth round. So basically everything around Eli Manning is brand new.
Okay. The staple defensive line that fans are accustomed, at least fans around the country are accustomed to seeing from the Giants. What does that look like these days?
Well, here again, there's been changes. Justin Tuck, the longtime defensive end and defensive captain, left via free agency, went to Oakland. That was simply a matter of Tuck is a 31-year-old guy who wanted one last big payday, and the Giants didn't want to give it to him. So he went to Oakland and got his payday. The Giants also lost defensive tackle Linval Joseph to the Minnesota Vikings, replaced him with a second-year guy, Jonathan Hankins. So it's a different-looking offensive or defensive line. Matthias Kiwanuka is at one end. The Giants brought in Robert Ayers from Denver. They're hoping that second-year man DeMontre Moore steps up and provides pass rush for them. But the big key comes back to Jason Pierre-Paul. Pierre-Paul was an all-pro in 2011, had 16 and a half sacks, simply hasn't matched that production since. Last year suffered, had back surgery in the offseason and was never really right all year. Pierre-Paul simply has to be a dominant player in order for them to consistently have a quality pass rush. So right now the jury is still out on that. We're waiting to see. We're waiting to see what version of Pierre-Paul shows up this year.
Bringing it up to the game this past week, what happened against Detroit? Obviously, Monday Night Football at home crowds. That is typically the home team especially, tend to be very up for those games. And obviously Detroit was. The revamped offensive line for New York had a tough time with the and in fairness, Detroit's defensive line is very, very talented. So
yes, it is.
What happened on Monday night?
Well, let's just put it this way. Nothing happened on offense that surprised me. The Giants had an extremely difficult time with Detroit's front, which made it very difficult for them to run the ball. Eli was under pressure. I think he was pressured on 11 of 35 dropbacks. So about a third of the time he was under pressure. He was sacked a couple of times. The Giants had a very difficult time offensively. The discouraging thing was that the secondary for the Giants, which is supposed to be a strength, they brought in Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie as a free agent. They brought in Walter Thurmond as a free agent. They have Prince Amukamara, who's very talented, former number one draft choice. The secondary gave up two big plays early on that put the Giants in a 14-0 hole. And that's the kind of thing that you didn't expect to see from this team. What you're hoping for is that the secondary will match up well against some of these high-powered passing attacks like the one they're going to see on Sunday, and that the defense can make some plays, create some turnovers, and give the Giants some short fields and help this offense while it develops. And as I said, the really discouraging thing Monday was that didn't happen.
Okay, that's good to know. So it sounds like defensively they've got, well, obviously going against Calvin Johnson, that is a chore in itself. Even the best defensive backfields are going to struggle with that because he is just a freak. But say you've got the matchup. Obviously, Cardinals fans will be familiar with some of the secondary. Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie and Antrel Rolle were both part of that Super Bowl team the Cardinals had a few years ago. And Antrel Rolle brings mixed feelings for his production. He's turned into a very good safety, but he brings up mixed feelings for his play here. Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, talented but super inconsistent when his effort. I know that's improved over the past couple of years. He's a bit more mature. But how do you see that defensive backfield matching up with the weapons that Cardinals have on offense between Fitz and Floyd and John Brown and John Carlson and now Andre Ellington?
Well, what I'm interested in seeing is how the Giants approach their coverage on Sunday. On Monday night against Detroit, the Giants, when they were not playing zone, which that's a whole nother story because I think they played a little too much zone. That's an issue that I have with Perry Fuel. He's got Cromartie, he's got Walter Thurmond, he's got Prince Mukamara, he's got some really outstanding cornerbacks who can press and who can cover man-to-man. And Giants fans would really like to see him allow them to do that more often. when they did play man-to-man on Monday night, they had Cromartie shadowing Calvin Johnson all over the field. And what I'm interested to see Sunday is whether the Giants do that, whether they simply leave Cromartie on one side and Mukamara on the other, or if they choose to match them up, have Cromartie possibly shadowing Floyd, or how are they going to do this? So I'm interested to see, not only to see how they match up, and also how well they handle all the weapons that Arizona has.
Assuming that, let's play a little game here where we make the assumption the Cardinals win. I know that's a hard thing for a Giants fan, but what happens if the Giants start the season 0-2? Now, granted, they were playing an offense in Detroit that is always very good, and a team in Arizona that has playoff aspirations, who believes they can compete in the very difficult NFC West. We've seen the Giants struggle early in many seasons. How much of the panic button is being pushed after 2 games?
Well, did you see the video after Monday night's game of the maniacal guy who started a bonfire and burned his Eli Manning jersey?
I actually have it. I see the link, and I hadn't clicked it because I was at work today.
Well, I would suggest that New York City Police Department pretty much blockade every bridge in the city if the Giants lose on Sunday, because people are going to want to jump off. That's just the reality. People are going to want to jump off. After one loss, they're already raising the memory of the fact that the Giants started last season 0-6. There's already a lot of questions about that. There's a hangover effect. So the sooner the Giants win a game, the better for everybody. But if they go 0-2, I mean, I'm not going to be surprised if they lose on Sunday. If they go 0-2, I think there's going to be a lot of there's going to be questions, and there's going to be a lot of panicked fans.
Tom Coughlin, been there now. How many years has Coughlin been there now?
This, I believe, is his 11th year. He's been there since 2004.
That's amazing, considering it seemed like for 10 of those he's been on the hot seat. What's the status of Coughlin? Is he significantly different than he's been? How has he been able to survive? Other than, he's got those 2 Super Bowl trophies, but how does he consistently, especially in the New York market, survive?
Well, the 2 Super Bowls helped quite a bit. They give him a lot of credibility. They give him a lot of goodwill. With that said, obviously, Super Bowls and all of that goodwill only lasts for so long. The question isn't, can Coughlin still coach? He can definitely still coach. He still has passion for it. He still knows what he's doing. The entire change with the offensive system shows that he's still willing to learn, because he had said he was in the same offensive system for the last 30 years. And what Ben McAdoo has brought to the Giants is new to him, is new to Coughlin as well as it is to the players. So he's still willing to learn. He still has the desire to win. He can still coach. The question, if this season goes south for the Giants, is going to be, simply, is it time for them to hear a new voice? Is it time for them to start over? And that's a question I don't have the answer to right now, but it is one that they'll face if this season doesn't go well.
All right. What do you think is going to be the biggest the biggest matchup for New York, facing, whether it's on either side of the ball? What is the biggest and most important matchup that the Giants have?
Well, interesting that you asked me that, Jess, because we have a piece from one of our contributors that's running tomorrow on the what we consider to be the key matchup, and And what he chose is actually the Giants' offensive line against Arizona's front seven. And I have no problem with that choice simply because the Giants have had so much turmoil in their offensive line throughout the preseason, and it's been such a work in progress. You can't do anything offensively if you can't block people.
We know that. We saw that in
Yes.
2012 when it was a disaster of a year.
And right now, the Giants haven't shown the ability to consistently block people. My feeling with their offensive line is that their offensive line has talent. They have a second-round draft pick in Weston Richburg, who's a good player. Justin Pugh at right tackle, I think, is going to be a terrific player. J.D. Walton has been around the league a little bit. Will Beatty had a bad year last year, but he had a terrific year 2 years ago. I think the issue with the Giants' offensive line right now is that it's unsettled. You have a group of guys that may be individually talented, but haven't played together. And what we're seeing a lot of is twists, stunts, blitzes, anything that's not a normal look from a defense. The Giants have been having trouble handling it, been having trouble picking it up. You're seeing guys run free. So that indicates to me that it's communication, it's trust from one guy to the next. And it's one of those things that doesn't get solved in a week or two.
Let's go with, what is the matchup that scares you the most? Or is that the same thing?
Well, what scares me the most, in all honesty, what scares me the most is the fact that I saw the Giants secondary on Monday struggle, which I didn't expect to see. And you're looking at another team with tremendous weapons, on the outside in the passing game. And that scares me. If we see those kinds of breakdowns again, then Arizona's simply going to score too many points for the Giants to deal with. The other thing that scares me is it's Thursday night, and you wouldn't ordinarily think about this, but I have absolutely no idea who's going to punt for the Giants on Sunday.
That's when you've got a very good punter in Steve Weatherford, that makes sense. Cardinals went through that a week ago. Dave Zastidle got hurt in the Saturday practice, and they signed a guy, Drew Butler, the day of the game, and he did the punting. He outkicked coverage almost every single time and got one blocked. That doesn't bode well if Weatherford's not punting.
Well, I think that Steve Weatherford is a unique person. He's a fitness maniac. He works out maniacally, and he's in incredible physical condition. He's probably the best conditioned punter on the planet. But he might be the only punter on the planet who would have any chance in the world of actually punting on Sunday, 6 days after tearing 4 ligaments in the ankle of his plant foot.
Ooh.
Which is what happened to him Monday night when he got roughed on a punt in the first quarter.
And it's those plays that you're reminded. You sometimes you hate those calls, but then you realize, when that happens, that's why they have those penalties in the game.
Right. I mean, and So I have no idea if Weatherford punts on Sunday, how well he's going to be able to punt. I have no idea if he doesn't punt. The Giants have raised the possibility of using Josh Brown, who's their place kicker, as a punter, or possibly signing somebody. And on top of that, the first 3 times the Giants punted on Monday night, they got one blocked. They almost had another one blocked. And on the third one, they practically got Weatherford killed because they couldn't protect him on that one either. So I'm a little bit concerned about the whole about the whole mechanics of punting on Sunday. So we'll cross our fingers and as from the Giants side, we'll cross our fingers and pray that works.
Okay, I've got two last questions for you regarding, it's not so much a prediction, but I'm gonna pose the question. If the Giants win, how will it be? What type of game will it be? What will be the score range? If the Giants win, how will they win?
Well, if the Giants win the game, I cannot imagine that it would be a shootout type of game. I can't imagine that they're offensively capable at this point of winning a game that would get into the 30s. So if it gets to that point, the Giants aren't winning the game. If the Giants win the game, they're going to have to play clean football. They're going to have to turn Carson Palmer over a couple of times and get some easy points off of Arizona mistakes. I mean, if they're going to win the game, it's going to be, 21-17, 24-20, somewhere in that range. And they're going to capitalize on Arizona turnovers.
All right. Final question. Leading up to is there a wait period, a time period that users have to wait before they can comment on Big Blue View?
Yes, there generally is.
Okay. Well, in that case, if Revenge of the Birds radio listeners, if our Revenge of the Birds site members go visit Big Blue View, what can they expect to see over the next couple of days?
Well, I think it's a nervous fan base. Are you asking in terms of posts that are coming up, or just the
content / vibe, kind of both?
Well, we'll be doing some matchup stuff. We'll be doing basic game preview stuff. We have a film study coming up tomorrow of Jason Pierre-Paul, who we talked about. We talked about him quite a bit earlier. The vibe, I would say, is nervous because right now, we're coming off of a season where we saw bad football really for the first time in the Tom Coughlin era. We've had ups and downs with during Coughlin's tenure, but the Giants have always been competitive. They've always been around the playoffs. When you got late into the season, the last couple of games have always been meaningful for the Giants, the last couple of games of the regular season. So last year, where 5 or 6 games into the season, it was obvious that the Giants weren't making the playoffs and were basically just playing out the season. That's not normal for Giants fans to experience. So right now, there's just a lot of nervousness, a lot of trepidation that we're headed in that direction again.
All right. Well, that's Ed Valentine. Thank you so much for coming on. You can find him on Twitter at Big Blue View, which is the same name as the site that he runs. Big Blue View on Twitter, whether you want to follow him or add him to a list where you can kind of follow along what's going on with the Giants while you're following along with what's going on with the Cardinals. Ed, anything else that you'd like to share for Cardinals fans who might be listening about the Giants really kind of for the first time?
Well, I just, I think that, the Giants are just an interesting team. It's just Tom Coughlin keeps using the phrase work in progress with this team, and folks basically are just crossing their fingers and actually hoping to finally see some of that progress. And hopefully we'll see some Sunday against Arizona.
All right. Well, thank you, Ed, for your time. Revenge of the Birds Radio. That is Ed Valentine from Big Blue View. Join the site. Head over to Big Blue View right now, bigblueview.com. Become a member of the site if you already aren't there. That way you can participate in this discussion with, as he says, a nervous group of fans. Thank you so much, Ed, for coming on. I really appreciate it. And this will be posted, by the time people are listening to this, it's already posted, but I'll let you know that we'll have it posted up in the morning.
All right. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks so much. You have a wonderful day and a wonderful evening by now.
You too. Take care.
You've been listening to Revenge of the Birds. Keep the conversation going by visiting revengeofthebirds.com. Follow us on Twitter at Revenge of Birds. You can also find us on iTunes at facebook.com/revengeofthebirds.